Story number 1. I never liked motels, but this one seemed decent enough at first glance. It was late, my eyelids were heavy, and the neon sign promised vacancy. The receptionist, an old guy with a lazy eye, handed me the key to room 217 with a half smile. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and pine cleaner. I tossed my backpack on the bed and decided to take a quick shower before hitting the sack. That's when I noticed it, a tiny red light winking at me from the smoke detector. Curious, I stood on the edge of the bathtub to get a closer look. My heart raced as I realized it was a camera lens staring back at me. Panic set in. I scanned the room. There, in the corner of the mirror, another red light. My mind reeled. Who was watching? And why? I had to find out. I pretended not to notice the cameras, acting like I was getting ready for bed. I lay there, eyes wide open in the dark, listening. Around midnight, I heard it. A faint scratching sound at the door. I tiptoed across the room and pressed my ear against the wood. Someone was out there. The next morning, I decided to play detective. I asked the receptionist about the previous occupants of room 217. He shrugged, saying people come and go. But there was something off in his expression, like he was hiding something. I spent the day wandering around the motel, trying to act normal while my insides churned. I noticed small things. A janitor who seemed to be everywhere I was, guests who didn't quite fit the tourist mold, and a black Van Parket at the back of the lot that hadn't moved since I arrived. That night, back in my room, the real terror began. The scratching at the door returned, more persistent this time. I braced a chair under the doorknob. Then, the lights flickered and went out. Total darkness. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum. The only light came from the red dots of the cameras, now blinking in unison. I felt watched, hunted. There was a low hum, and then a voice, distorted and crackling through a hidden speaker. "We're watching you," it said. I screamed, throwing anything I could find at the cameras. The mirror shattered, revealing a lens and a microphone behind it. I was being broadcasted, my fear a spectacle for unseen voyeurs. I had to escape. I yanked the bedsheets off, tying them together to make a rope. The window was my only way out. Just as I was about to climb through, the door burst open. The receptionist stood there, his lazy eye now fixed intently on me. "You weren't supposed to find out," he hissed, stepping into the room. I didn't wait to hear more. I scrambled out the window, clinging to my makeshift rope. I hit the ground hard and ran, not looking back until I was far away, hidden in the shadows of the night. I never did find out who was behind the cameras or why. But sometimes, late at night, I still feel like someone's watching me. And I can't help but wonder how many others like room 217 are out there, with their blinking red eyes waiting for their next unsuspecting guest. As days passed, the memory haunted me. I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, even in my own home. Every corner seemed to hide a potential camera, every shadow a lurking presence. I started researching, diving into online forums and conspiracy theories. I found stories, too many stories, of similar experiences in motels across the country. It was like a network, a spider's web of surveillance, unknown and unseen. I tried to tell my friends, but they laughed it off, saying I was just paranoid. But I knew better. I knew the fear that gripped me in room 217 was real. I couldn't let it go. I had to find answers. My search led me back to the motel. I arrived under the guise of night, parking my car a block away. The neon sign flickered ominously as I approached. The receptionist was there, his lazy eye watching me as I entered. "I just want to know why," I said, my voice barely a whisper. He sighed, a sound of resignation, and gestured for me to follow him. We walked down a narrow hallway, stopping at a door marked private. Inside was a room filled with monitors, each displaying different rooms of the motel. "It started years ago," he began, his voice heavy with unspoken regret. "It was supposed to be for security, but then we found out people would pay for this, to watch, to see others without them knowing. It became a business. I felt sick, my stomach churning with disgust and anger. And the people in the rooms, mostly random, sometimes specific requests. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I recorded everything he said. When I left that night, I had more than just my story. I had proof. The next few weeks were a blur of media frenzy, police investigations, and court hearings. The motel was shut down, part of a larger ring of voyeuristic exploitation. The receptionist, along with others involved, were arrested. But the damage was done. Trust, once broken, is hard to mend. I see the world differently now. Every motel sign, every closed door, every mirror brings back the memory of room 217. The fear has lessened over time, but it never truly leaves. It's a reminder, a scar of the time I spent in that room, under the watchful eyes of hidden cameras. I still travel with the band, but we stay in reputable hotels now. I check every room, every mirror, every smoke detector. Maybe I'm paranoid, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. Story number 2. My first job. A night shift at a small motel on the outskirts of town. It sounded easy enough for a college student like me. The pay was decent, and I needed the money. My job was simple. Check in the late arrivals, handle any guest requests, and do some light cleaning. The first few nights were uneventful. Guests came, guests went. But then, things started getting weird. I noticed some guests checked in but never seemed to check out. Room 105, 210, 307. They just stayed. No requests, no complaints, nothing. Curiosity got the best of me, and one night I decided to check these rooms out. I started with room 105. I knocked first. No answer. I slowly opened the door. The room, it was like stepping into a still photograph. A cup of coffee, still warm. A half-read book on the bed. But no sign of the guest. Weird, right? I checked room 210 next. The same scene. A laptop open. The screensaver floating across the screen. A suitcase half unpacked. No guest. Room 307 was the strangest. The TV was on, a low buzz filling the room. A jacket draped over a chair and a phone plugged into the charger, its screen lit up with unopened messages. But again, no guest. I started to feel uneasy. Where were these guests? Why did their rooms look like they'd just stepped out? My mind raced with possibilities, none of them comforting. I went back to the front desk, flipping through the check-in records. Those guests, their names were there, but the checkout section was blank. I decided to do some digging. I checked the motel's CCTV footage. I saw them enter their rooms, but they never left. How was that possible? Nights passed, and the mystery consumed me. I couldn't focus on my studies. I couldn't sleep. The motel, once just a boring job, now felt like a puzzle I had to solve. Then one night, as I was making my rounds, I heard a noise from room 105. A muffled sound, like someone was talking. My heart pounded as I approached the door. I hesitated, then opened it. The room was different. The air was colder, thicker. The TV was on, showing static. The coffee cup, the book, all gone. In their place, a single chair facing the TV. It was like the room was waiting for someone. For me. I should have left. I should have run. But I didn't. I stepped inside, the door shutting behind me with a click that sounded final. The static from the TV filled the room, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The chair turned slowly towards me, as if pushed by an invisible hand. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I was frozen, my feet glued to the carpet. The air around me tightened, like invisible threads wrapping around me, pulling me towards the chair. I don't know how long I stood there staring at the chair, the static from the TV filling my ears. Then, as suddenly as it started, the static stopped. The TV went black. The pressure in the air vanished. I could move again. Hey! I stumbled out of the room, slamming the door behind me. I leaned against the wall, my breath ragged, my mind racing. What was happening in this motel? What had I just experienced? Story number 3. It was just another gig, you know. I travel a lot with the band, so motels are like my second home. But this place, man, it was different. It was this old, kind of rundown spot off the highway. We checked in late, and I got room 9. The room was nothing special, but the mirror, that's where it got weird. At first, I thought I was just tired. I looked in the mirror, and instead of my own face, I saw her, a girl with sad eyes and long dark hair. I blinked, and she was gone. It freaked me out, but I figured it was just my mind playing tricks. The next day, I asked the guy at the front desk about the mirror. He just shrugged and said some story about a girl who used to live here a long time ago. Something tragic happened, but he wouldn't say more. I couldn't let it go. That night, I stared into the mirror, waiting, and she appeared again. She didn't say anything, just looked at me with those haunting eyes. I reached out to touch the mirror, and my hand, it went through like water. The world on the other side was gray and cold, like an old photograph. I was in the same room, but it was different, older, from another time. And there she was, the girl from the mirror, real and alive. Her name was Sarah. She told me she had lived in this motel long ago, but she couldn't leave this room. She was trapped, she said, because of something terrible she'd done. Each night I went back to the mirror to learn more. Sarah's world was sad and lonely. Her father owned the motel, and they lived there together. But then something bad happened. She wouldn't tell me what, just that it was her fault. I started to feel like I was part of her world, like I belonged there with her. The band noticed I was acting weird, but I couldn't explain. How could I? They wouldn't understand. One night, Sarah was different. She was scared, trembling. She said, "He's coming." I didn't understand, but then I heard footsteps in her world. A door slammed. Sarah cried, begging me to help her. I reached through the mirror, trying to pull her into my world. But as I did, a man's face appeared in the reflection, angry, twisted with rage. He grabbed Sarah and she screamed. I tried to hold on to her, but the mirror's surface rippled and she was torn from my grip. The mirror shattered. I was thrown back into my own world, the sound of breaking glass ringing in my ears. Sarah was gone. The man, her father, I realized, was the reason she was trapped. And I had just broken the only link she had to the outside world. The band found me on the floor, bleeding from where the glass had cut me. They said I was shouting Sarah's name. I tried to explain, but it sounded crazy, even to me. We left the motel the next day. I couldn't even look at room 9 as we drove away. It's been a while since that night, but sometimes when I look in mirrors, I swear I can see a shadow, a hint of long, dark hair. And I wonder if Sarah is still out there, trapped and alone.